Well, good morning. Welcome to the Gospel of John, my brothers and sisters. This is episode number 88 in the Gospel of John. Today's title is "To Better One Die Than the Whole Nation Perish." So we've been majoring on this central belief of Christianity, which is, does Jesus have power over resurrection? Now, he eases us into the concept with the resurrection of Lazarus, and then in a little more than a week's time, he's going to resurrect himself. And then that gives us hope, confident expectation that there's going to be a personal resurrection of me and you. So either God has this death thing or he doesn't. Now we find death does cooperate with this. That when God speaks authoritatively to death, death answers faithfully. So the timing is, as soon as we finish with the story of Lazarus, we're going to be launched very shortly into the Great Week. The Great Week is the last week of Jesus' life, and we're just a couple days away from it in this book. Let's read from John chapter 11, and this is the response of the Pharisees and the Sadducees to Jesus resurrecting Lazarus. This is John chapter 11, verse 48. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and Romans will come and take away our place and our nation. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it's better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." He did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. So the Pharisees are worried about losing their power and their identity, that is, their place and their whole nation. And then Caiaphas gives this very curious prophecy. So the source of it is from Caiaphas. Now, he's a high priest. He was son of Annas, who both of them were involved in the trials of Jesus in a little more than a week's time. He's the one that presided over the Sanhedrin, and he kept power for 18 years. It started in 18 AD to 36 AD. Now, the Sanhedrin is the ruling body of Israel with a wide power of civil, criminal, religious. Imagine that power. It's like we have the legislative and executive and judicial branches, plus a religious branch, all rolled into one. The context of this prophecy is kill one and save the nation. So it has this double meaning. So he's right that it's expedient if we nefariously kill Jesus. This is what he means by it. If we nefariously kill Jesus, everything settles down and we retain our place and our nation. So the question is, could God use the platform of Caiaphas' high priesthood to actually have a real prophecy? So MacArthur says, I thought he said it best, he says, but God providentially invested those words with a meaning that Caiaphas did not intend. In his capacity as high priest, and hence technically by office, God's spokesman, God ordained an opposite meaning when Caiaphas prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. Caiaphas unwittingly spoke prophetically of Christ's sacrificial death. God sovereignly turned his wicked, blasphemous words into truth. This reminds me of Genesis 50, where Joseph says about his brothers, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." So you meant this for evil, Caiaphas, but God's going to turn this upside down, as he so often does, and God's going to mean it for good. So the substitutionary atonement of Jesus is a goodness that all of us need to rely on. You know, Jesus' atonement is what makes us right before God. So how do you make something unholy acceptable before a holy God? It's a very big ask. So he's right. One will die for the many. The death of one saves all willing within the nation, all willing within the world, and it gathers people of God who are scattered abroad. So this theme introduces that Jesus will indeed die for all men, all countries. And his death is the banner under which we stand under. That's what unifies us, whether we're Jew or Gentile. So then what happened? So verse 54. Jesus, therefore, no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness, a town called Ephraim, that might be 12 miles from Jerusalem, and there he stayed with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They think, Kostenberger says that maybe 1 million people attended the Passover. They were looking for Jesus and saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will come?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, because he's kind of a needle in a haystack, he should let them know, so that they might arrest him. So Jesus is on a one-way street to the cross by way of Bethany and now the wilderness. It's not his appointed time, but it's coming very soon. The masses know that this is a highly dangerous situation. They're kind of looking for Jesus. Now that could be curious or murderous or hostile, or it could be yielding. And I'm thinking of his closest followers. Even they weren't much help. They abandoned Jesus in another week or so. But for us, a decision is ahead. Just like those who saw the resurrection of Lazarus, the people of the story and the people of us reading the story or hearing the story, like them, will all have a decision to make. So let's be looking for Jesus, kind of like they were, for it is only through him that one dies and the whole nation is saved. And that includes us. So like all of them, we're going to have a decision to make. Thanks for listening.